All right, hi everyone. So this video is going to be a demonstration on how to start your coil vessel or your coil pot. The very first thing we did is we talked about creating a template. So pretty much what I asked you to do was to come up with 4 sketches. We looked at some different examples. We looked at some Greek amphora. We looked at some ancient Egyptian canopic jars, and we even looked at some Native American pottery. Just as inspiration, and also kind of to get us looking at some historical vessels that have been created in the past. But I asked you to create a template, and here's an example of the template that I was showing. So remember, we wanted to pretty much, from those 4 sketches, create a profile outline of our vessel or our pot. And this is just construction paper. As I stated earlier, if you have a piece of something a little bit more rigid, such as a piece of cardboard, or this is a piece of mat board, that will work better for this. But I know we're at home, remote right now, so if you just have paper, that's fine. Whether it's printer paper, which is probably going to be really flimsy, or construction paper, which is a little bit more rigid, that's kind of what you want. But I asked you to create a template and draw the profile, making sure that the bottom of the template, the foot goes all the way to the bottom, and then leaving a little bit of space at the top. So here's the template that I created in class. And you can see that we've got our profile shape drawn on, cut out. And if I were to flip that little bit of positive space, so remember in art, we talk about positive and negative space. Positive space is the actual physical space itself, in this case, our coil vessel. The negative space is going to be all of that space around the coil vessel. So if you've drawn your profile, how you want your kind of the edge of your pot or your vessel to look, cut it out, flip it, you should get a pretty accurate representation of what your coil vessel will look like once you've created it. And that's if we follow our template. And that's the idea of this template, is so we can use it to help us kind of guide us in where we place those coils. So here I have my template. So that's what you're going to want to start with. If you haven't created your template yet, that's the very first thing you want to do. So make sure you create your template. I'm going to set this aside. And some tools that you're going to need are going to be your fettling knife, your needle tool. Remember, that's the one that just looks like a needle. Some dowel rods. We've already talked about soft slab. We've learned about soft slab. We're going to need to roll out a slab for our foot. A ruler, kind of optional, but you might want a ruler. And then, of course, our clay. So I've already prepared this little bit of clay for my foot. That's going to be the very first step. So we're working from the bottom up. So the very first thing we need to start with is our foot. And we've talked about the anatomy of a pot. So we know that our pot or our vessel will have a foot. That's what the vessel rests on. As we come up, the pot will need to have a belly. We talk about the neck of the pot and even the shoulder where the neck and the belly meet. So that's kind of this rounded area right here. And then it should come up, and at the very top there will be a lip. So kind of like humans, pots or vessels have an anatomy. So again, the lip, the neck, the shoulder, the belly, and the foot. And we're going to start with the foot. So creating our foot, I've got this clay here. I've already wedged it. I've started to kind of form it into this patty. I'm just going to set it there. I'm going to grab my dowel rods. I'm using 1/2-inch dowel rods. I could go to like an 1/8 inch. That's going to be pretty thin. I plan on trying to roll about 1/2-inch coils. So I'm going to stick with a 1/2-inch dowel rod for my foot, just so it's even consistency throughout. So as we've already done in the past, I'm going to start to roll my slab. Remember, I'm going to pick it up, flip it over, and rotate it 90 degrees. Start to roll in the other direction. Do the same thing. And I know that my slab is complete when I have my rolling pin or my roller completely touching both of these dowel rods. That way it should be even throughout because these dowel rods act as a stop. Now looking at this, I don't know if I'm going to hit that 4 inches. So if you remember when we talked about our template, I measured out, I had I think it was a 4.5 inch base. So from one end of the foot to the other end should be about 4.5 inches. I'm actually going to use this. This is a little hack if you have a Tupperware, a circular Tupperware. You could find something that's about the size that you're looking for. So I'm looking at the diameter of this Tupperware. It's about 4.25 inches. It's just shy of 4.5 inches. So this would be a good template to use. So if you have a Tupperware or something laying around, you can use that as your base. So I'm going to place it on top of my slab. I'm going to look all the way around and looks nice and even. So at this point, I'm going to use either my fettling knife. Since the clay's in that soft plastic stage, I could even use my needle tool, but I'm going to go ahead and use my fettling knife. And I am going to follow the perimeter. I'm going to make sure that my fettling knife is completely perpendicular to the table. If I'm going at an angle, I'm going to get somewhat of a beveled edge or kind of this angled edge. So I want to make sure that my fettling knife is completely vertical, up and down to my horizontal table. So I'm going to place that in there, and I'm going to follow that template all the way around. I'm just going to follow the edge of this Tupperware. And take your time. You don't need to go quick with this. Try to make a nice clean cut. Try to keep that tool, that fettling knife, vertical in the up and down position. And then I'm going to peel away the extra. And for the start of this, it's stuck to my template. So for the start of this, here I have my foot. So it's nice and circular, and that's where we want to be. So I'm going to set that foot aside for a moment. We'll get back to that in a moment. And next I'm going to grab some clay. So I've already wedged this clay. It's in the plastic stage. I'm going to rip off a chunk. I'm going to form it into kind of a log or a cylinder, just with my hand. I'm going to keep it kind of thick. And if we were in class, we have a machine, which is, or not a machine, we have a tool, which is a coil extruder, kind of like a Play-Doh machine. You place a big clump of clay, already wedged clay, into this cylinder. And then there's this lever that you pull down, which pushes the clay through a, like kind of this face that has a bunch of holes